Okay, I'd like to formally introduce Dorothy-Jean O'Donnell from the Marxist-Leninist Party. Thank you for coming to Strathcona today and helping these kids get engaged with active citizenship and for supporting their student vote and just to help them better understand government. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and I'm very happy to be here today with you in an important educational center for the youth in this area, which is on unceded Stolo territory. The first people of North America and of British Columbia were Native people, and their concerns are front and center in this election, where several of the parties are calling for an inquiry into the murdered and missing Aboriginal women, and the governing party has said that that issue is not on their radar screen. Our party's main issue in this election is democratic renewal. There's something wrong with the way the election process works. I'm sure you've heard more about it in this election being such a long period of time than you have earlier. But at the end of the day, there's a serious risk that a party which has been in power for 10 years and has maybe 30% of the vote is going to take the election again, because the other parties can't find a way to unite to defeat him. And the people are sort of left out of the process. They're left with having to choose between choices which are made for them by somebody other than them. One of the parts of our program is we think the voting age should be lowered from 18 to 16. And that would mean, as I understand, you guys are in 5 and 6. So that would mean that in 6 years, rather than in 8 years, you would have the opportunity to vote. One of the most important reasons why we think the voting age should be lowered, not just because 16 is the age for your driver's license. If you can drive a car, you should be able to participate in the direction of the country. But also because you're still in school when you're in grade 11 or 12, and you're part of a collective with other people. You have a place where you can bring your ideas and work out your stands and take a position together in the election. One of the proposals we make in general is that the nomination of candidates shouldn't be just the affairs of the political parties, but there should be public participation in the nomination of candidates. And we think that would help to have people engaged in the election process before the voting day and help solve this problem where a small minority party can take 100% of the power. So we're also against war. We have a proposal for an anti-war government. We think Canada should get out of NATO, NATO, which is a military bloc directed by the United States. And we're also for a renewal of the economy so that essentially that people get to decide the future of the economy. It's not left to somebody else.
Okay, thank you very much. So they were lowering the voting age to 16, reducing or no war, and what was the last one again?
Renewal of the economy.
Renewal of the economy.
So that the decisions about the economy are made close to home.
Okay, so just give the kids a chance to write that down. So if you have a question, guys, give you a second to think of your question, and then if you've asked one already, looking for people who haven't asked a question yet. So we're looking for 6 questions for Dorothy-Jean. So if you want to ask a question today, raise your hand. Okay, don't forget to introduce yourself.
Okay. My name is Bill, and I was wondering how you stop like graffiti on walls and buildings.
Sorry, how you stop what?
My name is Bill, and how will you stop like graffiti going on buildings and on walls here?
So it was, how do you stop graffiti going on walls? Not really a federal issue.
Right.
So I think we'll.
Well, I mean, I can just say briefly that I think that many more resources should be made available to the youth than there are right now. There should be active support of recreation centers and various programs for arts and culture and various positive things for young people to engage in. I don't think that having the criminal approach to these problems is going to solve anything.
My name's Emma, and how will you improve with public safety?
We say that our security lies in the fight for the rights of all, and that there needs to be a new way of thinking about ourselves as human beings, so that we have a society in which every human being is valued and what they require in order to live and prosper is provided to them. So in that regard, no one should be turned out of the society. Yes, there needs to be a court system, and it needs to do its work, and there needs to be rehabilitation for people who have done wrong. But the idea that has just come up recently, like a brand new idea that's never been even thought of before the last couple of months or so, is that somebody's citizenship can be taken away from them because they've done a criminal act and are in jail. I think that's wrong. I think we have to have a society that includes everyone, even those people that need to be kept in jail or need to be arrested or need to be put on trial. They shouldn't be just, like the old days when they just used to take people out and hang them. That was the slavery system in the U.S. and we've got beyond that. So a humane justice system and the provision of social services, especially to young people, is the way to go.
Hey, I'm wondering, what's the benefits for veteran affairs? What will you do about it?
So the question is, what will you do to address or to deal with veteran affairs?
Well, that's one of the really shocking things that has come out in the course of this election, that even the amount of money that the government allocated, that the government said that it was going to spend for the veterans, they never spent it. So, and in the end, that money was poured back into the government coffers so that they could say that they had a surplus in the budget. So the veterans are people who, for one reason or another, have joined in the Canadian Army, Navy, or Air Force and gone to fight wars, or have gone to serve in some other capacity. And there is a real duty to assist those people to live a full an active life. Now, up until this government now, veterans used to get a pension. So for the rest of their life, they would get a payment every month that was, in a sense, a recognition of what they'd contributed. And the government has changed that, turned it into a lump sum payment, maybe $30,000, $40,000 or something like that, which, you know, is hardly enough to make a down payment on a house. But, or people can do various things with it, but after that $40,000 is spent, who's to care for them for the rest of their lives? So we say that all the veterans services places that have been shut down across the country, they should be reopened, and that there should be a substantial increase in the support payments for veterans.
Thank you.
My name is Mass, and I was wondering, will you help public safety by always having or making sure that kids have parents or adults around them?
So the question is, will you?
I can read it out again.
Yeah, a little bit louder, please, Madison.
My name's Madison, and I was wondering, will you help public safety by always having or making sure the kids have parents or adults around? It's confusing.
Yeah, so I think we've covered a public safety question. So we're going to ask a different question, Madison, if that's okay.
I can
Do you have another question?
Oh, not really.
Okay, we've kind of gone over the public safety.
Yeah.
My name is Nicole, and do you think fisheries regulations are too strict?
So the question was, do you think fisheries regulations are too strict?
Well, I'm very concerned about fish farms. I don't know if anybody has spoken with you about this problem, but over the last 10 years or more, there have been a practice has developed where they basically grow fish in a pond, and there's a danger that the pollutants, I guess you could say, from that could get in and affect the wild salmon. That's why you hear, you go to the grocery store, you have wild salmon is advertised. Every salmon was wild when I grew up, but now wild salmon is treated as a specialty. There's a expert on this, Alexandra Morton, who has done very good research about this problem. And so that aspect of the fishery definitely needs significantly increased regulation, if not eliminating fish farms entirely. The second aspect is, I spoke at the beginning about First Nations. There are many unresolved questions about First Nations, but one of them is that the First Nations right in this area made an invaluable contribution that can never be forgotten about saving the salmon fishery when at the early part of this century, there was when they were building the railroad through the canyon, the rocks all collapsed into the river, and what to do? The natives are saying, we won't have fish forever if the fish can't get up. And by hand, the native people carried the fish up past the blockage and actually saved the salmon for everyone. So I think it would be a reasonable idea to have First Nations manage the fishery. And if you wanted to get if you wanted to go fishing, you could go to the local stolo to ask for a license, just as well as you could go to Department of Fisheries. I think that would be one step to overcome the injustices against First Nations people.
If your party was elected,
How much money would you invest in healthcare and medicine development?
Well, our party's position is we're for increased funding in healthcare and social programs. But there's another part to that question I have to address. We don't think parties should get elected. Parties are made up of less than 1% of all the people in country belong to any political party, but they've got 100% of the power. Okay, when I was referring earlier to there being people, if you got your vote lowered to 16, the high school students, they could put forward a candidate who you actually, people you know, who you support, and put them forward. And a process whereby the program is worked out for the constituency and people select their candidates. Of course, parties can play their role, but there should be no public funding for political parties. We say fund the process, not the parties. So there should be, for example, meetings like this in every community center, in every workplace, university, high schools, in which people get together and make up their minds. And then they find a spokesperson for their ideas rather than the other way around.
Thank you. One more question.
How will you improve the environment?
So the question is, how would you improve the quality of the environment?
Well, we say we need to humanize the natural and social environment. We need to, this problem about people not having control over the decisions that affect them is most important in terms of the environment. These pipelines that are being proposed, that it's going to ship bitumen abroad. Now, bitumen, I don't know, sometimes they call them as if they're oil pipelines, but bitumen is this gucky, black substance that's sort of like asphalt. And then they sort of cook it up with some bad chemicals so that it can flow through these pipelines. But the question is, why don't we use the bitumen, either leave it in the ground for the next generation to solve, or else use it to produce power and here in Canada, we have had a terrible devastation of the manufacturing sector in Canada. 450,000 manufacturing jobs have been lost over the last 10 years. We need to build up our own country, not ship raw materials abroad. And anyways, we say that people need to be actively engaged in solving these problems and not leaving them up to somebody else.
Okay, thank you very much. So in the spirit of previous candidates, we're going to ask you one last question, Dorothy-Jean, and that is, you're running to be the representative of the riding of Chilliwack-Hope. And if you are successful and we send you to the House of Commons, what will be the single biggest thing that you would like to do for this riding during your term?
Well, right now, the Member of Parliament gets money from the government to run constituency offices. There's one down on Vetter Road for Mark Strahl, for example, who's the current MP. We say that the budget for the constituency office should be turned over to a constituency committee, which is elected by the people in the riding, and that's who the MP has to answer to. And that constituency committee has its sole aim to ensure that everyone in Chilliwack-Hope has an informed vote. So it doesn't just come into being in the 6 weeks before the election, but throughout through the whole 3 or 4 years, invites people to get together, to decide what's important to them, to set their priorities, and give direction to the MP. So it's not the MP giving Ottawa's voice here in Chilliwack-Hope, but the people in Chilliwack-Hope are able to have give direction to the Member of Parliament. So that work for democratic renewal has to take place in Ottawa, but it has to take place on the ground here in Chilliwack-Hope as well. And incidentally, I'm from Hope, and I'm a lawyer, and I've been working for the Marxist-Leninist Party for basically since I was a teenager, for all my adult life.
Thank you. And that concludes our presentation for Dorothy-Jean O'Donnell from the Marxist-Leninist Party. So thank you for joining us. And it's probably a busy time for you, and obviously you have a full-time job as well. So we just appreciate you coming in and
Okay. taking
time out of your day to share your platform with us. So can we give our guest Strathcona Elementary? Dorothy,